can move back to an open meeting. So
Yeah.
you just have to, and you set up YouTube.
Yeah.
So we're good to go.
We're
We
all
are.
ready to go?
Yeah.
All right.
And I
Sorry
still
for
haven't
those
heard back from
technical
Judy.
hiccups.
So
I'm sorry, what?
I texted Judy, but I haven't heard back from her.
Okay, well, let's keep moving forward, please. We'll now move on to item 5, which is the draft 5-year financial plan. And this is an area for Kristen. 5.1 is the draft 5-year financial plan, 2024 to 2028. And we've allowed about, I think, 25 minutes for this discussion. So Kristen, I will turn it over to you on this, please.
Thank you, Chair. I developed a short presentation for you, so I will just bring that up at the moment. I have a lot of things to choose from here.
There's Carla.
Are you seeing my slideshow?
It's coming up.
There
Yep.
it is.
Okay, great. Okay.
We're seeing perfect.
Okay, wonderful. Okay. So we have done a first draft through of the 5-year financial plan for 2024 to 2028. So I'm pleased to be able to present that to the committee now. There's some underlying assumptions, of course, built into every financial plan this year. We are making the assumption that inflationary pressures are going to be sticking around for a little bit. So we have included a provision for salaries and benefits at 4% for year 1. And we've included 4% for year 2 and dropped down to 3% for 2027 and 2028. We also assume that interest rates are here to stay high for the time being. So we have estimated them to be in the range of 4 to 5% throughout the planning period. That's good for us for savings. It's not so good for us for some of the variable rate interest loans that we have. And we have 3 years remaining on our fire truck loan, and we will have interim borrowing as the projects proceed for the infrastructure projects for Blue Water Park, potentially Eagle Cliff, and also now potentially sewer as well. So we like to use interim borrowing, draw down money as it's needed to advance construction. That is subject to fluctuating interest rates, and then lock it in once the project is finished. In this financial plan, we have put in an estimate of 9.5% tax increase over 2023 for 2024. And we've actually embedded that for a 3-year period. And what we're trying to do with that is to get the tax rate to a level that is sustainable for us in order to maintain significant capital infrastructure investments. We have deferred several projects, many projects, deferred a lot of investment in our capital infrastructure over our 20-year progress as a municipality. And we believe it's really important at this point to try and catch up. So by establishing this rate at 9.5 for 3 years, we believe that that level of taxation is what's going to be needed to sustain that ongoing investment for into the future. What that would look like for an average house in 2024, these rates are still based on 2023 BC assessment roll values. We have not got our new preliminary roll yet, so I'm just working off of 2023 final roll values. But for an average house owner at 1.5 million of assessment, a 9.5% tax increase would be about $297 per year per property owner. The impact of the non-market change, again, we don't have that data just yet. We should be getting that in the next few weeks from BC Assessment. So that is any value of new construction that's taken place or any reclassifications of properties from, say, business to nonprofit or residential to farm, that kind of thing. That is not yet known, but that typically has a lowering effective impact to people because we have new value on the roll. Financial plan assumptions for this year with regards to the community center. We believe that, I've built the model under the assumption that all of our identified funding sources of the contributions will have been spent by December 31st, leaving only that unfunded portion to pay for. And in this plan, I have accessed and used the Growing Communities Fund grant that we received earlier in March of this year, and used that to fund all remaining budget expenditures. And we are estimating that to be at approximately $2 million. Now, that being said, our fundraising campaign, it continues, it's going on. We're very encouraged by the level of community support, and we do hope to bridge that remaining fundraising gap. And that will leave council in a position then to make a decision that those funds could be repurposed for other urgent priorities and help in this struggle to catch up on these infrastructure projects. We are expecting that the community center is going to be open to the public in the spring of 2024. And I also just wanted to take a moment to let the committee know that we have hired our facilities manager. So I would like to just mention that. Welcome to Lee Vincent, and he just started with us this week. So we're really excited to have him on board and help us to get this facility open and operating and welcome the public. Talk a little bit about our revenues for this year. You can see the annual property tax has been inserted there, 9.5% for 3 years, at such time that we believe that it can return to something a little more sustainable. We're earmarking 4% for a go-forward rate. There's an increase in parcel tax this year. It comes from two things. We do have more rolls that showed up on our 2023 tax roll this year regarding Grafton Lake, the new lots that came on there. So we do have some significant additional properties that the parcel tax will be collected from, but also we are increasing it because we have equipment down at Bird that we need to invest in. We need to replace some old equipment, and also in the Cove we've got old garbage cans that need to be replaced. So we've got an item in there in the budget for that. Grants in lieu of taxes, those are not a significant amount of change. Sale of service revenue up to 546,000 from about 450 last year. Some of the things that are in there are an estimated increase to our recreation revenue as we get going in the new community center. Our investment revenue, we estimate that will be up year over year. And as well, we have put in a target facility rental revenue in our new community center facility of $60,000. So yeah, altogether, we do expect to see some additional revenues in 2024 over 2023 from those types of activity items. The grant revenue there, the biggest thing, of course, is well, there's some significant line items in there. We do have we were awarded last year, notified that we were awarded a grant, significant $2.1 million grant to complete the Eagle Cliff and Cove Bay interconnection. A portion of that revenue will be recognized within the general fund, and that is the portion of the revenue that is the contribution for the culvert work that the municipal contribution is going to be coming from general fund for. So some of that revenue is going to be recognized in the general fund, and some of that revenue will be sitting in the utility fund. So that's about 450,000 of that grant revenue is related to that project. We have some other new grants, operating grants this year that we've budgeted for, and they are in the fire and emergency department. So we have 3 separate $30,000 line item grants that we're budgeting for emergency operations, fire equipment, that kind of thing. And then there is a $40,000. It's a new grant coming out from the province in support of emergency planning. It's called Emergency 911, and it's about increasing capability, increasing capacity for small communities and actually communities all across the province. Everybody's getting some of this. So we have about $40,000 budgeted in that initiative. And lastly, we don't have confirmation of it. We've put it in the budget. We've put offsetting expenditures in the budget for it, but it's $150,000, and it's a disaster risk mitigation program grant. So the expenses are showing up. If we don't get the money, the expenses won't go forward, but we do have to budget for it in the event that we're successful on that grant. So we are excited and hopeful about the opportunity of that grant. Our donation revenue, we really don't anticipate anything significant. Development revenue, we're pleased that if you look at the year-to-date actual on development revenue, we've almost achieved our budget for the year. So we are quite happy about that. We don't expect any significant new development revenue in 2024, so we're taking a conservative approach there. And our other income, mostly just miscellaneous. Our investment revenue is making up the significant line item there. So I don't know if you want to ask questions as we go along, or do you want to save them till the end, Chair? What is your preference?
I think as we go forward now at this point that you've gone through this particular slide, that we should probably have questions as we go along.
Okay, so
I'll offer that to members of the committee who may have questions as Kristen proceeds. You can put your hand up like John has just done that. So John.
Thank you, Fred. Just looking at, I guess, the 9.5% for the next 3 years. I think that's correct. What if we go back, how many years have we had an increase over 8% in the last number of years?
I don't have that information right at my fingertips.
Allison, do you?
My gut's telling me we haven't, but I can't confirm.
Last year,
just this last year. So it's just
13.4.
The tax rate never exceeded 6% prior to that.
Okay, because I'm a bit worried that, of course, the 9.5% is compounding, I believe, and so at 9.5, if you have like 7 or 8 years in a row, you're doubling or close to it. I think I'm not that good an accountant, but anyway, we are really getting into heading towards territory where taxes are going to be quite substantial, and so that I guess I'm just flagging that. I think that's it. The composition and the residency of Bowen is changing, and perhaps incomes are increasing in terms of turnover, etc. But of course, I think we have to recognize there's a lot of people that are on fixed incomes. Granted, a lot of them are seniors, can defer, but still, it is heading into hardship territories if in 27, 28 we have to keep increasing as well. So I think that has to be flagged and acknowledged in all public discussions that there is definitely a plan to try and address the total increase as one lives here in the next 10 years. What are the taxes going to do? I'm fully aware of all the cost side and the pressures, but But on the other hand, it is pretty aggressive to show 9.5 for 3 years in a row when, as was pointed out, other years like 6% would have been high. Now, granted, when we had the 6%, we weren't getting the rate of inflation we get now. So that, of course, has to be addressed as well. But I think we really have to spend a bit of time, which I'm sure council is agonizing over, in the amount of the increases for the next 3 years.
Yeah.
So that's, I guess, not a question, but then the other one is the grants in lieu. And I know I've asked this question before, but I guess it should occur that there is at the Cape a major revenue generating operation occurring through however it happens. Would there be grants in lieu collected? I know if it's a passive park, there's no revenue coming in, so there's no grants in lieu. But I guess the question is, has there been any discussions that if for some reason the campground gets approved, which does have negative camping fees and there is revenues, is there going to be grants in lieu to share some of those revenues back to the municipality?
Those properties grants in lieu they are payments from utility corporations, so they're payments from BC Hydro, TELUS and Shaw, it's based on their revenue generated within the municipality. It's a percentage of their revenue. So then they don't pay taxes on things like their underground fiber in the ground. So that's what grants in lieu are. Is there any mechanism to collect taxes from the lots at Cape Roger Curtis that are now owned by Metro Vancouver? I think is the question that you're getting at. Those lots, now that they are owned as on the roll at October 31st of this year, owned by Metro Vancouver, they are exempt from tax. So there's no mechanism for us, the municipality, to collect taxes from those lots. As long as they are utilized in delivery of their program, which would be a campground, they are exempt from tax.
Yep. But okay, fair enough. But I thought senior levels of government do sometimes in some municipalities pay revenues to recognize that they don't have to pay property tax on a major building in a municipality, but yet it still has all the costs of a major building in a municipality.
Yeah, those are federally owned properties, so we do collect a nominal amount of revenue from the RCMP station and any of the residences that are owned by the RCMP. Again, it's Metro Vancouver is not subject to that grant in lieu payment, nor is the provincial government.
Okay. Thank you. I think comment about the increase. I haven't seen one at this level before, but I understand. I think we all understand why we're where we're at and why we're here in terms of the position for the municipality. So my comment, I'll just pass that to Liam. You had your hand up, or are you?
Oh, I was just gonna say it's a nomenclature thing. The federal grant in lieu is called a PILT, which is basically just
Okay.
payment in lieu of taxes, and there's no mechanism for regional districts to get that exemption. And in all honesty, if there was revenue generation through something like a campground, it would be pretty nominal. I don't think Metro would entertain the notion of sharing, even if there was a mechanism, because it's hardly going to cover the cost.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Kristen?
I will move to the next slide.
Well, hang on, I had a question. I don't know what happened to my hand.
Oh, your hand went away. That's why I didn't ask. But
I didn't get
ahead.
rid of it, so I don't know what happened to it. It was just a clarifying question. The year-to-date actual column is actual. It's not projected year-to-date, right?
Yeah, it says of November 15th.
Yeah, so that was okay. So, and then I just wanted to clarify that the big grant revenue item in 2023 is just because of there's probably a whole backlog of billings for the community center that haven't come in. Will it bring it right up to the 9? Or-
Yes, there are some, we have to do another grant expenditure claim. There was some work on an asset management profile that we need to complete before they will release any further grant funds to us. So Lee and I are on deck today to start to develop our asset management profile for the community center. So that's what's holding that up.
Yeah, because I guess part of the reason of asking that is that if the billings that come in for work up to December 31st don't go up to the 9,500, then that column number in 2024 is going to go up.
It will, but for budget purposes, it doesn't.
It's a
impact
wash.
revenue. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I just chose to ignore it and leave it out.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Oh,
You, yeah.
I don't know how to lower
Yes,
my
you.
hearing.
Use the utilization of reserves for 2024 to 2028. So you'll note when we get to the funding of reserves that those each of those statutory reserves that are established to support a specific purpose, municipal purpose, that we're funding them at a lot higher because we're spending them at a lot higher. So roads and infrastructure has some significant capital projects this year that we want to look after, that need to be looked after. So between the use of capital renewal and replacement fund and the roads and infrastructure fund, we will be able to move forward with those projects. We have that growing communities fund. It was 2.287 in grant revenue to us in 2023. We established council established a reserve fund for that. So it has been put in there temporarily. And we believe that that is going to be the source of funding for 2024 to complete the community center. If there is no alternative and there is no additional donation revenue received, then that will be what is used, and it'll be unfortunate because that's wasn't a expected pot of money that was received, and it could definitely be used for other pressing significant infrastructure or recreational or other priorities. But if that's how council chooses to use it, that will be it. So non-statutory reserves, we have some. I'm actually trying to wind up some of these little funds and get them off the books forever. We have these monies that we've received in prior years, access to the sea and reserve for beach access. So we're going to be accessing those little pots to do the shoreline restoration work that Carla has in her environment and parks budget. The community hall donations fund, of course, is going to be winding up, as is the fire hall replacement. So we will continue to see fewer and fewer non-statutory reserves going forward, and our preference is to keep everything as much as possible in a statutory reserve. So total use of statutory and non-statutory reserves for 2024 is estimated at 19 million. Similar amount for 2025, and then dropping down to 15 or 16 in 2026 through 2028 as we begin to kind of level off the investment in capital infrastructure each year.
A quick question, Kristen,
yeah.
As it relates to the climate action funds and
yes.
the proposal that solar panels be installed on the fire hall together with a heat pump. Just a quick question. I mean, there is considerable money, and I expect that's going to become an ongoing priority going forward overall. Is there a reason that we've chosen the fire hall of all buildings to do it, kind of in the trees, versus say that even the library or the new community center, why we haven't maybe targeted that as a priority for that type of passive solar support? overall.
Um,
And I'm also looking at the level of usage in each of those facilities versus the fire hall.
So the climate action funds is actually something that council's going to have to talk about. There's a whole lot of different initiatives that could potentially be eligible, and those funds could potentially be used for. That's also why Carla's here with regards to the on-island compost. The installation of solar panels is a quick, simple, immediate project that can be done, that will generate instant savings on electric and utility bills, that kind of thing. There's also a suggestion that those funds could be used for water capture and storage for fire hall, which would then be used to fill the pumper trucks. So that would reduce the use of water that is and the use of, you know, accessing water from a municipal system to put it into fire trucks to fight fire. So looking at greener ways and not accessing municipal water systems to fund fire trucks, to fill fire trucks, is another kind of innovative and interesting use of those funds. So it's put in as a potential line item, but it is going to be highlighted for something for council to consider. There are we have put in the budget that we're going to continue to receive the climate action funds, but the program as it stands, I believe this is our last year or next year. No, this is our last year of receiving. 2024 is the last year for that program until they announce something new, a replacement of some sort. They do have a requirement to be spent by 2025. So we do have to make a decision and utilize those funds within this budget cycle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Liam and then John.
Thank you, Chair. It's a good question about why the fire hall versus other roofs that the municipality owns. And, you know, I think if we did do an analysis of like the available daylight hours, that the fire hall would be the lower of the ones. But ultimately, we'll be looking to install solar panels on all of our facilities. And so the fire hall is built solar ready, so it's a really easy connection. It's not difficult to retrofit solar panels into a building like the library, but the annex already does have solar on that building. And so we're trying to get a little bit on everything. The same thing for the community hall in the future, we'll be looking to add there, but it is a really good question. And so yeah, from an actual solar gain perspective, it's probably not the best, but it is definitely beneficial.
Okay, thank you. John?
Thanks, Fred. Yeah, I was just going to point out, I think this fire hall, which actually one of the volunteer firemen pointed out to me, was a great design this time, because when it snows, the snow sheds to the side rather than falling in front of the trucks like before. And but the big roof faces south, I believe, which is sloping like that is actually the ideal for solar. But I believe, and I don't know whether it's worth looking at it, whether spend a little bit of money to ask some people, a company, to do some surveys with just simple instruments that sit on a roof, and then indicate, you know, in over a 12-month period, you know, does that roof really get a substantial amount of solar that's going to generate electricity to pay back quickly versus slowly. So I believe, you know, that can be done. But, you know, the other thing, of course, yes, the trees growing up do end up blocking the sun for parts of the year. But that's something to look at. I think the community center, I think the roof slope maybe not in the optimal directions. So that one would be worth studying as well. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, Allison?
Well, I guess the comment is, we've got this grant and we've got to spend it in 2024. So I don't know that the community center has been built to be solar ready. And putting something on the library, given the age of the building and the cedar roof, I don't know if that roof could even support the weight of solar panels. So I'm happy to go ahead with either the fire hall or the composting.
And I'm not raising it as a big issue, it's just to identify that there are other opportunities. And there also is obviously more than the 70,000 that's associated with the fire hall, with the balance of that particular grant. I just have one additional question as it relates to the use of statutory and things like public works and infrastructure. Do we have any concerns about capacity? I mean, we're playing a catch-up game here in some ways. And as a municipality, do we feel we have capacity to do the level of restoration and work that's required going forward over the next year or two? Or
I would say yes. I'll leave it to Liam, but the projects are $1 million invested in culverts. Those would be done by subcontractor, and between 500 and 600,000 per year on road rehabilitation, again paving and upgrading to roads is done by subcontractors. So I'll leave it to Liam to add to that.
Liam?
Thank you, Chair. Just want to make sure I understand the question. When you refer to capacity, do you mean...
I think there's a lot of demands being made on staff and the municipality over the next 3 years, because I say we're kind of in a bit of a catch-up situation as it relates to infrastructure and a few other things. And are we confident in our ability from a capacity point of view to handle this increased volume of work?
I really appreciate that question. It's a very good question, and it's something that we're keenly paying attention to. And I do talk with the mayor and council about it at times because it is concerning. The team has been going pretty hard already for a couple of years, few years really, and there's more to come. And so we do pay close attention to that, and we're trying to ensure that people don't get burnt out, that we're not pushing too hard, because there is a lot of that catch up. And so when we're planning the work, we're starting to pay even more attention to that capacity question and trying to build that into the planning process with council as well, to ensure that we're being realistic about our ability to complete the work that we're taking on. And really what we're focusing in on right now, and with the support of this mayor and council, it has been exactly that, a catch-up game. So we're trying not to take on too much net new and focus on completing what's already in the proverbial pipe and the curveballs that are getting thrown at us from the aging infrastructure.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Kristen, back to you.
Moving on to our operations budget. We are predicting an increase of 12.5% increase overall in operational expenditures. This is tempered because many of them, they're not always funded by property taxes. So the operating budget and the property tax rate don't always go coincide with each other. So I did do quite a detailed report about some of the budget areas, but I can just kind of talk quickly through them. Mayor and council budget is not predicted to have any year-over-year increase. There are provisions in there for the compensation adjustments that were made. But of course, with the first year of any council, there's always one-time initial expenses that are dedicated to getting that new council up and running. There's some strategic planning expenditures, there's expenditures in tech and IT and that kind of thing, and new council orientation. So those don't repeat in the second and third and the next year of their term. So that's why the expenditures are relatively flat. We have included everything, but we know that there's some savings from last year that we won't be needing. Admin and Finance has some significant things in the budget this year. We do have the return of an incumbent from a leave, which always has additional expenditures associated with it. There is a $20,000 consulting expense that's been added to undertake our records management development of our records management program. We also have some additional expenditures anticipated with our professional fees And of course, we do throughout, you'll see this throughout all of the salary budgets. We are expecting a significant increase in our extended health and dental benefits costs this year. So we are working on that right now to review the benefit plan and see if we can find some efficiencies within that. We haven't completed that work, and this budget doesn't reflect any of that work that we're doing right now, but we do hope that we will be able to find some additional efficiencies in there as we move forward with that. Finance year over year, we had some additional expenditures resulting from the RFP, and then again is cost of the 4% COLA and progression through the grid. Again, the impact of the medical, health, and dental benefits, and the full year impact of any of the 2023 labor market adjustments are putting pressure on that finance budget. General government is actually going to go down, so we'll be having some savings from the rent here and some of the other rented spaces. So that budget, because we aren't moving in until the spring, the savings aren't as large as we'd hoped for. So we won't realize the full impact of the savings from the other rented and maintenance costs of the other rented spaces until we fully get in there and fully be there for the entire year. But those savings will you'll see them percolate through in the later years. Fire and emergency is up very significantly, but again, that's related to I think there's about $280,000 of grant funded expenditures in that budget that are kind of making that look significant. There is an additional 0.4 FTE request from the fire department. The volume of calls, the level of service that they have been required to provide to the community is increasing, and they have asked for a 0.4 FTE. They've actually asked for a 1 increase, and through our budget, through our initial budget process, when we first came to the table with all of the staff together, with everything in the excess of revenue needed to meet all of the requests was $409,000. So from there, we've taken $409,000 out of the budget through various things. It's not all coming from the operating budget, of course, but we got it down to the level of 9.5, but that was our starting point. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you. Andrew?
Yeah.
I'm just curious about the volume of calls, given what we've heard from the BC Ambulance Service, knowing that the fire department was responding to a number of medical calls, and whether the call volume from the fire department is expected to go down with the additional increase in service to ambulance on the island.
I don't have an answer to that question, but Liam, or we could certainly tap our fire chief to provide additional information on that.
Yeah, I think my sense is if we're going to see a reduction in call volume, it's going to be a staggered reduction. It's not going to materialize right away. And one of the things that we've been talking with the fire department about is the level of first responder training that they have. And so they currently some of our members are trained effectively to an EMT level. And so I think what we see happening sometimes is that they are able to respond faster. They know the island better, and so they're quite quick at responding. And I'm not sure, even though we may get better staffing at the ambulance center itself, that when a 911 call goes out, they will still respond. So it's a good question, and I'll put it to the chief, but I think it'll take a while to see any kind of reduction, if any.
Okay, thank you. Allison and John.
Yeah, sort of a couple of things. One, in Liam's comment, it's the 911 operator that you talk to who decides who to send the call to. Because I do remember when Alan had his pulmonary embolism, they didn't call the fire department. And Ian sort of said to me, we didn't get a call. And yeah, they only called the ambulance. So it seems to be a decision of that department as to who to call. And I think if they get a call, then from 911, then I think they have to respond. So maybe that's a process thing we need to follow up with. My question was clarification. It says in the comments on your detailed sheet, Kristen, it says increase of a 0.4 FTE to assistant chief. Are you meaning a 0.4 FTE to assist the chief as a clerical type person, or was it an additional number of hours for the deputy chief?
Yeah, it is at the deputy chief level. They kind of use assistant chief and deputy chief interchangeably.
Okay, so would that raise that to a full-time position then?
It's
Or
a point where they have not determined how they want to allocate it. They are possibly keen to even engage a new person to help round out their team and help with just
so the reason I asked is I thought there was some need for some clerical assistance.
We have actually been internally from the finance department supporting the fire and emergency from when we have some downtime in the day, we have our finance utilities clerk helping Aaron, Chief Hannon, with some of the work that they have. So he's been very pleased with that assistance, and we hope to be able to continue that for the time being.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Liam?
Yeah, just adding on to that, I know that in the service review of the fire department, that was a key area of recommendation, was for administrative support, but the current operating model has been working very well for Aaron and the team, and where Aaron believes their most needed support is in training and at that higher level management. So that's where they're looking to gain more support.
Thank you. John?
Fred, just looking at, I guess, a couple items. So yes, admin finances jumped 18% from 23 to 24. And then it only is at a 3% increase. But I thought this year or next year you're anticipating some extra costs, which Kristen explained. But I'm just wondering then, if those extra costs go away, why we still need a 3% increase. I'm just trying to think of ways to maybe trim this, 9.5 in 3 years in a row. And then the same occurs with public works. Of course, we do want the big increase, because that's the one where we know that there's time bombs ticking out there of culverts failing and bridges failing and things like that. I believe that's where that comes from. And it's showing quite a big jump from 23 to 24. And then only, roughly 2% after that. Facility operations is the big one that keeps really growing aggressively. Is that so? From 24 to 25, there's a big jump. Is that because we're anticipating programs to really ramp up?
If I could just maybe go through the rest of the departments, I'll get to that one, and maybe that might address your question, John.
Okay.
Thank you.
Planning and development. There is, of course, the same budget pressures on salaries and benefits that is affecting all of the departments. But this is one where we believe that there's an opportunity to reduce a portion of the admin FTE, which is what we're using to then try and fund the FTE in fire. So we're reallocating, we're doing a shift of FTE from planning and development into fire. By law, there's just no real change expected in that department year over year. And public works, so public works council approved a temporary full-time FTE to support the Public Works Asset Management Program development last year. That position came on halfway through the year. And the funding for it was actually not included in the Public Works budget last year. So what you're seeing here is now we've taken that FTE salary expense, salary benefit expense, and we put it into the Public Works department. So you'll see a big jump between 2023 and 2024 in Public Works in respect of the moving of that FTE over in there. And it came out of the strategic initiatives budget. So those are things that are council priorities that were kind of things that don't really have a home anywhere else to live. We kind of pop them in there.
Kristen, just before you go further, it looks like we're going to run overtime here. I just want to make sure everybody's going to be available, or there's an issue, or if there is an issue,
Thank you.
about other commitments. I'll just wait for a second for a reaction to that. I'm not sure how far it will go. I think we'll probably maybe focus on the high points here, Kristen, rather than like some of the stuff we can probably bypass. Your report I thought was very good, and I think the support that it provided. But I just want to make sure that everybody it would be okay if we move after sometime later than 11:30.
Okay,
That's fine with me.
Everybody okay? Okay, hearing none, let's continue then. Thank you.
okay, yeah, I'll speak fast. Community recreation, they have some savings this year as we will be vacating the youth center, the children's center, that kind of thing. They have reinstated their part-time recreation clerk position in anticipation of the work that's going to be needed when the new facility opens up. They are going to have that added support. Environment and parks planning, we've just added another provision for turf field work in that budget as well. Most of that increase is driven by maintenance and supplies from that, as well as a provision for salary benefit increase and strategic initiatives. That is we are including funding for the OCP process this year. We're including a $50,000 provision for funding to undertake the MRDT tax. Look at perhaps bringing that on in Bowen Island over the next couple of years. And there's some other projects that are identified in that report. The facility operations, John, to your question, in 2023 budget, we were working under the assumption that we would have an October 1st opening. So this is the annual budget for staffing of the facility, as well as all of the maintenance and operating supplies. So we were looking at a half year. We were looking at having that facility manager in 2023 hired for July 1st and then opening October. So we had about a quarter of the year's worth of maintenance expenditures and a half year for the facility manager. Now this year we've revised our assumption. We now know we have our full-time facility manager, and we'll probably be looking at about 9 months worth of operating expenditures. And then you see it in 2025 level off as we've got the facility open and operating at the full capacity starting in 2025. So that's why you kind of see that that jump in the interim while we're gearing up to get it off and running.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Were there other questions with operations, or should I move on?
Move on, please.
Okay, capital expenditures. You've had some time. We've provided you quite a bit of detail about the timing and identified the particular projects that we are hoping to undertake this year and in the next 5 years. Did you want any information about any of them in particular?
I'll ask the committee members if as well.
Thank you.
I don't personally.
I do.
Okay.
So I'm just looking at the one for the library for the pipe. Is that 50,000 just to develop the plan, or is it to actually fix the problem too?
Patrick has given me that budget figure to deal with the problem.
Okay, And, oh, yeah, okay, that was, my just general comment has to do with, I guess, the culverts and the road rehabilitation. Are we going to get more specific detail as to just how much it costs per meter for culverts, which culverts are going to be done, how the decision was arrived at as to which ones? It just seems like an awful lot of money, and what was the estimated useful life cutoff that they used and things like that, and how did they inspect them? And could it be spread out a little bit more so that instead of having 9.5, 9.5, 9.5, could we then have, you know, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, instead of dropping from 9.5 to 4. So, how critical are some of these culverts? And so, because that seems to be the big number that's driving the tax increase. Anyhow, those are just sort of general comments to think about.
Mhm.
Okay. That may be something that you might want to provide for council. I don't see that so much for us here right now.
Yeah, I guess just from a responsibility and process question, how are these numbers arrived at?
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. I'm like, I've had, you go onto the website for Saanich, and there's an awful lot of detail on their public website for, the cost that when they're for their asset management plan. So that's sort of my question.
Mhm.
Okay, we'll leave that if we can. I mean, we note that, yeah, each percentage point of increase is what, about $85,000, somewhere around there.
Yeah, about 75 right now, but in the following year it'll be 85. Yeah.
Yeah. So those are the types of things that can be impacted. But I think for the purpose of what we're dealing with here, I have nothing further to say about that. Please carry on, Kristen.
Okay, I just had a visual of those. Wanted to talk a little bit about debt servicing. This is the debt service budget coming right out of the 5-year plan. I just wanted to point out that this is the interest and principal only required to service the general fund, the island-wide debt. And because we've yet to work on the local service area budgets, those costs resulting from local service area debt is going to be in addition to this, but of course funded by the local service area. All debt, regardless of whether it's local service area or general all island debt, it's all factored into our maximum debt service cap ratio, which is equal to about 75% of our municipal revenues. And I just updated the schedule that I did presented in the budget last year, and I've added a provision perhaps for the compost project. But looking at what we do have, what we know about, we do know about the Blue Water. We do know there will likely be debt approved in Eagle Cliff. If we add on the 2 other general fund projects that are proposed, the compost project and the Workshare 30-year project, that would push us to about a 56% debt service ratio. What's not in here is new debt that is going to be required in the local service area for the sewer. There's a significant $1 million project that is urgently required in the sewer district, and that is going to have more debt impacts for us here. Contributions to statutory reserves. You can see we're making a dedicated, intentional work to increase those contributions year over year, so that the expenditures, we take the expenditures out of the fund, and if we don't quite spend it all, we're left. We always ensure that we leave those funds in the reserve to be repurposed for the next year. So that's why we, rather than taking our property tax revenue and paying for the capital project, that's why we have this pattern of fund the reserve and then fund the expenditure out of the reserve. That way you don't lose the benefit of that savings in the reserve for any project savings that you incur over the time. But the one that is most significant, and it's driven by that work that was done on the asset management that was shared with you earlier this year, was a significant increase in contributions to fire protection reserve. And what we're trying to do there is to prepare ourselves for that new $1 million fire truck acquisition that we're going to be looking at probably in about 2030. So we don't want to keep accessing debt. We want to be able to have the money on hand to buy that when the time comes. Just a quick overview of contributions to non-stat reserves and interfund transfers. Just a note that I have included a provision for the library budget. I haven't seen the library budget yet. They haven't come forward to council with it yet, but I have put an initial provision in there for the library budget for a 7% increase over last year. So in the whole financial development plan process, what's still to come, of course, is confirmation of that library budget. We've received notice to bargain from our QP union for our outside workers. So we have not yet started the negotiation process with them yet. So we will be working hard and very collaboratively over the next couple of months to come to a new collective agreement with our outside workers. We don't know what the impacts of non-market change are going to be yet. And I did highlight for you that we are doing a lot of work in the background right now on our benefits package and looking to see if we can achieve some efficiencies in those costs, because they are a significant portion of our staffing costs. The community center facility management budget has not had, our facility manager has not had an opportunity to review that and go over that and provide his feedback on that budget. We are going to be meeting later today and we'll start that process. So there may be some changes up or down, possibly, with that community facility management budget. So that will probably be something that we can expect some changes from. And of course, the water and sewer budgets, they will be developed over the next 4 to 6 weeks. They won't impact the tax rates in any way, but they will be brought into this budget, and we'll see a consolidated budget that will include any debt and any interest and principal payments from that. I did mention the sewer outfall project. And also we need to have a conversation about what our public engagement process will look like around this budget. We are in the middle of setting up a new engagement module, and we're hoping that we will be able to utilize that to use our public engagement process this year. So we still are trying to figure out just what that's going to look like. But I think that's it for me. And I'm happy to take any questions. I'll stop.
Okay. Do we have any questions further for Kristen? John?
Sorry. Yeah, looking at the one item for the fire truck, we're adding $300,000 to the reserve.
Yeah.
And so that way, when we get the $1 million hit in 2030, we'll be borrowing less, I guess, is the theory, or borrowing nothing.
Yes. We should be getting ourselves to a place where we're not borrowing for fire trucks and equipment. We should be able to fund those with existing reserves.
So, and then earlier we had said for every $75,000 increase in budget, it relates to a 1% tax increase. Was that?
Every 1% increase in property tax revenue is about 75,000.
So really, we're raising property taxes 400,000 or 4% to cover that 300,000. Then, is that right?
Among other things,
but yeah, 300,000 divided by 75,000 is about four.
Yes, we did contribute 150,000 last year. So if we year over year contributed the same amount, that would be zero.
But anyway, what I'm getting at is we are taking a big tax hit now to reduce the tax hit in 2030. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas right now we're in a difficult situation of a 9.5% regime, anticipating it dropping to a lower rate in later years.
Mm-hmm.
If we didn't contribute the full 300,000 now, we could lower the tax increase now, and yes, the tax increase may be more in 2030.
John,
That's just one
as part of
example.
as part of your budget package, there's very detailed schedules about each fund and what the estimated contributions and utilizations are of those funds.
Mhm.
And I think if you look at the fire protection fund, you'll see that the level of funding that we are suggesting is what's needed even to fund current expenditures in 2024. We have a $250,000 request to replace all of the self-contained breathing apparatus equipment. We don't have that level of funding in the fire department fund right now. So we need to get that contribution up. We have a $430,000 bill to pay in 2025 for delivery of the fire truck that's currently
Okay.
on order. So I think if we reviewed those schedules and had a deeper dive on that, I think the levels of contributions are appropriate.
Okay, no, and that's useful. And yes, I did see the breathing apparatus and other things. So, I mean, to the lay people, which I am, I'm an architect, not an accountant. You just look at the 9.5%, and then you're looking at 300,000 just being parked in a reserve. What you're not realizing is actually a shell game. Well, sorry, that's a bad word used in accounting. But anyway, it's essentially you're putting 300,000 into one pot, but then you're immediately taking, through the normal budgeting process, almost 300,000 out of that same pot to manage annual expense, the current expenses this year. And so it would be, you could argue it can be confusing to the non-accountant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think,
and it would be fair during the budget meetings and process to take time to explain that to people, because I don't know, maybe there'd be no pushback to the 9.5 on an ongoing basis, but I get that's helpful. And
no, that's good feedback too. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's okay. Thank you.
okay, thank you, John. Just one final comment from my perspective. I appreciate the fact we're taking a bit of a more long-term perspective in addressing the issues rather than a year-by-year kind of situation. And I think that's an important point. And I think, Kristen, you identified what the cost would be for an average taxpayer based on a home value of 1.5 million. And I think those kind of things reinforce the message and the business case that you're proposing here overall, and support that. And sometimes we kind of react to some numbers without context, and I think that provides additional context for those discussions.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions of Kristen at this point? Any other matters to be addressed?
We've got to deal with Carla and the composting.
That's a separate point.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought you were.
No,
near my hand.
Andrew, you had a hand up.
Yeah, just I think the tax rate increases, and this is just to make some public comments to generally, as well as John's comments as well, is that I think it'll certainly be discussed around the council table, but I would remind members and the public and council and the community that this also arose out of a discussion last year of needing to accurately represent what the costs of infrastructure and the investment of infrastructure were going to be in the community. And the way that I would frame the conversation a little bit, it's not that 9.5 is the starting point. We need to get it down. This is actually already coming down from a 12 or a 14 or a 16. We know that the infrastructure on this deficit on this island is incredible. So the order of magnitude estimate that we have is in, pushing $100 million at this point, and an unlimited amount of money could be put into roads, water, culverts, sewer, just about anything that we could imagine at this point. And it's an unfortunate position for this council in this term to have to kind of first get an accurate sense of what those large infrastructure numbers are, and then how are we going to pay for it as a municipality effectively on the back of a single funding tool like a property tax. I think the plan that we have moving forward, knowing that there are unknowns and unknown variables that are going to come up over these next years, particularly as we carry out our asset management planning, are going to be present. And, if we can leave the next term, the folks that are coming in 2026 with with a 4% increase year over year, I think we will have done a good job. I'm confident both in staff's ability and in council's ability to really be accountable for these costs. I know that we're going to be looking at pieces line by line to ensure that we're responsible for the dollars that are coming in, knowing that it's going to be a hit to working families, that it's going to be a hit to seniors on fixed incomes. But from my seat, I'm not sure in any other way to do it. And those figures are there, so we can look at that previous committee of the holes from council with the with capital forecasting. I'm sure we're going to hear more of it now, but it's going to be a tough conversation and a tough pill to swallow for the community when we try and fund these infrastructure requirements effectively starting at zero in some cases.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? I think we're now ready to address the recommendation of the committee. It's provided in the agenda that the FAC recommend the following regarding the 2024 to 2028 draft 5-year financial plan. Read the tax increase, which is identified at, I guess, 9.5%. And maybe Carly or Sophie, you can insert the numbers from the schedules as it applies to the contribution to reserve funds, planned capital works for 2024 to 28, planned operational budgets 2024 to 28, and draft capital expenditures and proposed funding sources for the MEP Works Yard and OCP. And again, that's really from a planning point of view without a commitment to the expenditure at this time for the last point.
I ask a process question?
Please.
If we're just going to present the numbers as in the budget, why don't we just simplify the resolution to say that the Finance Advisory Committee recommend that the 2024-2028 draft financial plan be forwarded to council for discussion?
Okay, I'm supportive of that. Any other concerns that relative to that revised recommendation?
No, if that's a motion from Councillor Morris, I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. Seconded. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Okay, thank you. That is passed. We're now going to move on to 5.2, which is on-island composting facility capital and operating budgets. And Carla, I believe you will be taking the lead on that particular position. Does everybody happy to continue, or would you like to take 5 minutes just to sort of just checking? Anybody need to?
I'm just going to run and refill my coffee cup, so I don't need 5 minutes to do that, and I can hear you the whole time.
Okay, well let's keep proceeding then, please. Thank you, and Carla.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
Listening in the background there.
Yes.
In the kitchen.
Thanks.
Okay.
I did bring a presentation with me today. I'm not sure if you want me to kind of speed through it a little bit. We're pretty far over time, but is everyone familiar with the project? I've been here a couple times before, I think. Okay, so I'll pull it up and I'll just kind of show you a couple of pictures, what the preliminary design looks like, what it looks like on the site, and then I have a table just to go over the capital costs and how those have changed. So, sorry, can you guys?
Not yet.
Okay, just a sec, sorry.
Yeah, we've all had a chance, obviously, to see your report, so.
Okay, yeah, so I'll just show you a couple of pictures here.
Not happening.
Do you need Sophie
Is
to
it not
put,
working?
put your report up? Or do?
Haven't got your report.
Um, oh, there we go. Sorry.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay. So
Okay.
I don't know.
Next slide.
Yeah. Okay. So we know a little bit about the background already. Okay. And so last we heard we had an expenditure approval of $5,000 in January to work with Green Mountain on the preliminary design. And that's what we've been doing over the last year, just about. And I don't know why I can't seem to get, oh, here we go. Okay. Okay. I'm not going to go over the benefits of the project here and, you know, a little bit about it, but I will say the one that this committee might be most concerned with is that we do have potential to save quite a bit of money on tipping fees and costs associated with transportation of green waste to the mainland. This is the preliminary design here. It's a 3D rendering of the two buildings. So this larger building is completely enclosed. We have the earth flow system here. It would consist of 2 augers. I'll go a little bit more into this on a different slide. And then an ASP system. All of the compost is kind of made in this building, and then we bring it out here to cure. You guys can see my cursor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. And so it cures out here. This is storage for the finished compost. And then we have more storage over here for wood chips and overs. So those are to be used in the winter when we have mostly just food waste. And then this here is a biofilter that filters the air for the compost facility.
Okay.
This is what the buildings look like. So they're like a covered vinyl, UV protected vinyl fabric. And those have a 15-year prorated warranty, I think, but they're supposed to last about 20 to 25 years. They're a galvanized steel frame with this fabric over top, and they're mounted onto lock blocks. So this is kind of what the enclosed building looks like. And then the other building is more of a shelter style, with one side open to put materials in.
Can I just ask,
And
Carla?
yeah, for sure.
Is this proven technology? I mean,
Yeah,
if people's using this, I know there was once in a previous discussion about whether we were being innovative or looking to work with what it really is proven and tried and true systems as it relates to this type of processing.
For sure. So Green Mountain has this earth flow system that's an auger. It just runs back and forth and through the compost to kind of mix and grind it. They have about 100 different sites with similar technology, kind of running the same kind of system. We're also using an ASP system, and that stands for aerated static pile. So basically what it is it just pushes air through these piles here as they stay still, and it's automated based on the temperature. And this is a kind of technology that's been around since like the 70s and has been an industry standard for probably 40 years.
Okay, great.
Can I just interject there for a moment, Chair?
Sure.
Originally we were pursuing what was considered to be a more innovative technology out of New Zealand, and that was the in-vessel hot rot system, and that doesn't have as many in use or in practice examples that we could draw upon, and so because of the expense and the associated risk with the innovation of it, we started to look at alternatives. And this is a much more conventional, tried and true, tested, closer. The technology providers in Bellingham, Washington. There's local examples. So we feel much more confident with this and much lower risk.
Thank you. Appreciate it. John, you had a hand up?
Thank you, Fred. Just Blackberries and horsetails. So does this sterilize and kill all invasive species?
I don't want to make promises about that. I think that some testing should be done before we confirm that, but yes, it should. With the temperatures that we expect to have over the period of time that we expect to be keeping it at that temperature, it should kill invasive species, yes.
But it's something that needs to be confirmed because it's any gardener
Mhm.
will tell you they don't want that compost if there's
For
a
sure.
chance
For sure.
that we need to bring out the blackberry ladies to remove the blackberries at a later date.
Mhm.
And then so is food waste going into this as well?
Yes.
And in food waste, do we check that there's no drugs or things thrown out in the food waste that ends up in the compost stream? Has that been an issue in other municipalities, or just
Not as far as I know. I mean, I think that just, anecdotally, I think that would be more of an issue with compost from wastewater treatment plants, like the soil that comes from the Richmond facility. That's all of the it's
Sludge.
sewer.
okay? Yeah.
The sewer stuff. And so that's where you might see a problem with that. But I know that they've done a lot of testing and they've found that the soil that it's decomposed enough that that it isn't a huge issue.
Okay.
There's been pretty extensive studies on that.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. And then the last question is the buildings themselves, I guess the question is, could the roof systems be designed to accept solar panels
I don't think
over the vinyl?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well,
There might be potential, but it's like a galvanized stainless
Yeah.
or sorry, steel frame. And so potentially they could be mounted on there, but I don't think you ever really want to put holes into the vinyl because I think it just could start,
It's sort of like what's on the bird
Yeah.
thing right
Yeah.
now, isn't it? Or the gravel or
Exactly.
sand. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much exactly like that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Go ahead, Carla.
So I didn't have too much more to say about this. I just wanted to point out that this ASP system. This runs, it's actually in the floor. So when the machine goes in to move materials around, it's not going to scrape that or anything. These are the control panels over here. And then this pipe that runs along, it pulls the air out of the building to do the air exchanges through the biofilter. So it gets pulled down here and then gets pushed out through the biofilter to clean that air and rid it of any smells.
Okay.
And this is just a screenshot from an operation at Hayday Farm in Bainbridge, so which is in Washington State, just to show you kind of what it looks like in real life. And so you can see the control panel here, and then the two concrete pony walls with the system mounted on the rails between them. And then there's storage on either side. Our building would be a bit bigger and more heavy duty than this one, but just to give you an idea.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have another, this is an ortho photo of the bird site with a site plan over top. Ortho photos are notoriously kind of distorted. So the property lines don't match up here, but the building and the ramp do. And it's basically just to give you an idea of where it is on the site and an idea of the scale of the facility. So this is the larger building with the compost, and this is the storage over here. The capital cost estimates. So we had the original capital cost estimate for the hot rot system was 1.5 million, and that's important because we use that number to apply for the Clean BC Organics infrastructure grant. That covers 2/3 of the capital costs up to this amount, so 1.019 million. This number doesn't go up when the capital cost goes up. So, which is why when the price went up of the hot rot, we decided the project wasn't going to be feasible as is. So we started looking at the earth flow system instead. And it did look really good when we first looked at it in January 2023, but it's gone up since then. And so we're sitting at about 1.6 right now. There's probably three main reasons for that. One is that we hadn't allotted enough money for site prep. We had a really low number for that before because it was going to be in an area that was already, kind of semi-prepped. Right now, we're going into a more wet area. We're going to have to pull out a lot of material and replace a lot of material. We're also asphalting, which we hadn't planned on doing either, but I think is important to do. The price for the earth flow has gone up as well because we've upgraded to a 2-auger system, and as well as all of the ASP components, the aerated static pile, the blower and piping components. And then the building price has gone up as well. And that's partly my fault because I think somewhere along the way, I didn't realize that the lock blocks had been included in the price of the building. And then so when we repriced it, it looked similar in 2023 as in 2021, which was a little shocking, but it was because the lock blocks weren't included. And those, the price of those has gone up significantly. We're at like about $100,000 for just the lock blocks. So, and then one more thing too is this: the project contingency was put at, we raised it to 25%. It was only 15 before. And the reason for that was because most of the capital cost was based on one item that wasn't expected to change very much. But the 25% is a more reasonable contingency for a Class C estimate. So the borrowing for this project, the municipal portion is $523,000. And with the looking at the cash flow, the 15-year cash flow, during the first 5 years that the facility is open, it looks like we would be it would be costing around $30,000 to $40,000 per year while we're paying back that equipment financing loan. And then we should start seeing a cost savings of around $90,000 a year after that. So for next steps, I'm presenting this to council on Monday, but we're not going to ask for a decision on whether to proceed with the project. This will just be for information, and we want council to be able to consider the project in context with the entire budget. So they will have a chance to look at that at the committee of the whole meeting on December 13th. And then, but we will need to ask for a decision before budget approval in May in order to get the project done by the grant deadline, which is March 31st, 2025.
Okay. Yeah. Any questions for Carla as it relates to the proposal? Okay, I have just a couple of questions really quick. One is I'm trying to get my mind around the fees that are being charged for the product at $20 per yard. Recognizing that in other areas, the charges are between $10 and $50 per yard. And for current activities on the island, it's costing $225 for a yard and a half to have it delivered to the island, which obviously includes the delivery charges, which would not be the, which would be a saving to anybody on the island that's accessing this material. Is there a reason that we're not charging the higher end in terms of the per yard cost? It's my first question, and I'll just add a second one real quick. Does the staffing level that's proposed allow you to actually sell the product? In other words, if you're looking at a very limited labor support for the complex, how do you handle on-site sales to contractors over the course of a normal work period? And I guess my last, I'm going to ask you a third question. Sorry, loaded up here, but is will there be an issue of the fact that taxpayers who are actually going to be funding a portion of this project will not have access to the product that's being created from their tax revenue, from their tax source, if that in fact is a consideration. So sort of 3 questions there, I think.
Okay. Well, yeah, so the price is basically based on the fact that we're not making soil. Compost is not as sellable of a product as soil is. You know, compost can be used for a lot of things, but once you mix it with sand, that's when that's what the product that people want. That's the product that they know and that they want. So, you know, we could definitely give consideration to putting the price up to $50, but my concern was just if I did it at $50, that people would question why I put it at $50 and why I think we can, you know, our compost is good enough to sell at the top price compared to the mainland. But I mean, we certainly could do that if we could find someone to pay that amount of money for it.
Well, and that might address the differential. And I mean, currently, literally, either a soil and compost mix or compost and sand mix is costing $225 for a yard and a half. $50 would allow you to bring in a lot of direct soil to supplement. I mean, if you were a commercial operator, you could find ways to make that really pay really well. And it's almost like $20 is kind of like not, maybe doesn't recognize what benefit is actually accruing here to users on the island. Just a thought on that point. So I think there's money there on the table, I guess would be my reaction. And I only know about this because I used to use a lot of we lived in the interior and we accessed compost facilities in the interior. And how should I put this? Take up is really high. I mean, it's a valued product. And I don't think we should diminish it as it's not an economy product. It's a high value product, particularly on the island here, recognizing the soil conditions that exist here. Just a thought on that one.
Yeah. No, I think that's
that may reduce the deficit a little bit, or the funding requirements.
Yeah, definitely. And then in terms of your other question about labor, I guess I haven't necessarily included that, but the way that I was picturing it, like for sales was if we're selling it wholesale, that would be a pretty quick process that someone would only be coming by once we do have quite a bit of storage on site. So at any given time, we can be keeping like there's room for about 380 tons of material on site, which is more than what we do in half of a year. So potentially if we're selling this product wholesale, like we might only have to do a couple of pickups each year. So, you know, maybe like 3 pickups a year. The idea with compost, usually you want to sell out twice a year. You want to sell out in the fall and you want to sell out in the spring. So you want to have no storage. So I don't foresee that being a lot of labor. And then for the community having access to the product, I did have plans. I was hoping that, you know, there would be opportunity to potentially sell some product through the Knickknack Nook if they were interested, and that would potentially be a charitable thing. I think that you know, we had concerns before about whether or not we could get rid of the product. We didn't know how much storage we were going to have on site. So I think at this point, when we know we have enough space, maybe we are better off selling it, but there is opportunity to give it away to different community groups, like the Grafton Gardens, like the Knickknack Nook, and especially for smaller amounts that they might be able to sell it through those organizations.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
I just raised it as a point of consideration.
Okay.
So I don't have an answer to it, but in terms of, I think it's just part of that to view how it may be looked at within the community and the cost. As I said, I don't think I think the position is it's a quality product that you're producing that's probably in high demand.
Yeah.
Go crazy. My wife had a commercial greenhouse operation, and I had my pickup truck up at that place all the time, loading up yards and yards of that material.
I think one community benefit we could definitely expect is that it will go down from $225 for a yard and a half. I think that's one thing that can be expected.
I think that's pretty safe.
Yeah.
Sorry, thank you. Andrew?
Yes, just a question about the operating budget. I note that there is a line in there for repairs and maintenance. Is there a provision somewhere for renewal and replacement of this facility? Or can there be? Is that a possibility?
I haven't worked that into the budget. We did talk about that a long time ago. I think Liam might want to speak to that. So repairs and maintenance are about $2,000 a year, less at the start, more a little later on. A lot of the components of the facility won't really need replacement for quite a long time. If lock blocks last a really long time. I do have an extra $30,000 in here for the replacing the roof of the buildings in year 10. That's something that can be expected, and then most of the components of the system are fairly small, easy parts to replace and fix. That the operator can do, and they would be kind of constantly doing a little bit of maintenance each week to make sure that it keeps going. The concrete floor, things like those, once they're there, a lot of that doesn't need to be replaced very often, maybe in 50 years. I can let Liam speak a little bit more to renewal and replacement if that's what he wanted to do.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Carla, and good question, Mayor. So is Carla and I did talk about that very recently too, about the need to be building that into all of our capital planning. And so this capital or operating cost forecast is pretty good, and I think it's pretty conservative, which is what we want. And it does show a positive return of about, if we average it out, $85,000 a year is a conservative return. And so over a 10-year period, you're looking at about $850,000. And so you can look at it from two ways, as a return on investment and as a renewal and replacement fund. And so if we're thinking about, okay, that includes the roof replacement, which would be the largest cost item renewal within that time period. We talked about some of the smaller elements like the skid steer and the auger itself needing replacements. And so one of the thoughts would be we could set up another statutory reserve specific to this facility, and that all the revenue, net revenue, goes into that reserve, and so we can build that up and then have an adequate amount to replace the parts as they expire. So
Right.
From a sort of a global perspective, over the first 15 years, and a conservative approach would look at a possibility of $850,000 reserve, which really would just be cycled back into renewal and replacement.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's helpful. I only ask given we seem to have a number of financial chickens from 20, 30, 50 years ago that are coming home to roost. And even though something like this is, wouldn't need to be replaced for, again, that length of time, it's whatever we can do to give our successors a more sustainable future would be helpful. So thank you for that context, Liam.
Thank you. John?
Thank you. Just flag a few things. It was mentioned that the facility now is located in a wet area. I don't know whether there's some soils testing has been done, but I suspect there might be quite a cost to put a reinforced concrete slab on that area because of potential settlement. You may actually be putting down a lot of gravel drainage layers. and doing a lot of compaction to avoid the concrete slab failing over time. That's something worth looking into. The other thing to check into is it shows drainage from the facility. Drains coming out on the bottom, I believe. And I guess the question is, where does that drainage go? Because of course we don't want to go into any nearby water courses, I think, or perhaps that's been studied, but that has to be very carefully looked into. I think the mechanical parts, that's probably your big replacement item. It was mentioned the auger, but that's probably more, rather than having a reserve, it's just a certain amount per year set aside for wear and tear on the auger system, going back and forth and doing its thing. We have two of them. So that's something that definitely has to be carried. And then the last comment I have is, when we talk about revenue, I think that one of the main intentions of this facility is actually expense reduction to avoid the cost of trucking all our material off the island. So that's the question I have, is we're one of the big goals of this facility is actually expense reduction to Bowen overall. And so when we're talking about the little revenue coming out, even if revenue is almost zero, if we have a major expense reduction, we're ahead of the game. So it might be fair to the facility to allow it some leeway, because it is reducing our expenses, offsite trucking, to maybe even budget some support if they have their revenue doesn't meet expectations.
Yeah, maybe I can just respond to a comment there too. I mean, my position overall, it recognizes that it is a reduction, but why not take advantage and recognize that there may be revenue opportunities. So there may be some consideration in that overall, but I also don't think just expense reduction is the only basis on a long-term consideration of the operation. So it's a balanced approach, basically, is what I'm trying to suggest going there. Kristen?
Thank you. I'm sure we touched on this, but I don't remember what the answer was. And it was, is the proposed pickup, does that include the commercial green waste as well, or is it just from the residential?
It's mostly residential. There is we've kind of deemed the commercial pickup to be pretty insignificant in comparison to the residential. Many of the businesses actually have their own systems for green waste, and then there's really just a couple that we pick up from.
Okay.
Did you want me to respond to John's comments about
If you'd like to, sure.
Okay. So just in terms of the concrete and the site prep, we have done some pretty conservative estimates for those. There's a lot of fill being budgeted, and I had a machine operator come by and take a look at what needs to be done there, and he confirmed that our numbers were pretty good. The drainage that was worked into the facility there, that's for the leachate. And so that goes into a tank. The tank is kind of a maximum of about 2,500 liters. And then that can be worked back into the compost process. So we can just put it right back onto the compost pile when we drain that. We will have to have an operating plan done by an environmental professional. And at that time, they're going to assess any potential impacts to the environment. But you know, even though we do know that our water table is quite high there, so that's a potential concern. But the Terminal Creek is, it seems quite close, but it's more than 30 meters away. So we're not in the riparian area there at all.
Okay. Thank you. Allison?
Where was the original site that you were looking at?
So it was always at Bird. But it just moved around the site a lot.
Okay, so and that's not feasible to use anymore, because you said it was better base.
Yeah,
is
I
it
think
being used by Bird right now?
I think that they are using more of the site than they had before. A lot of they just have been expanding more and more the last couple of years, I think, just with the amount of recycling and the amount of waste that we're picking up is becoming more and more difficult to fit on the site as it is. So the fact that we're developing this kind of new area that's been previously undeveloped is they're
Okay.
a lot happier with that.
Okay, and then looking at your operations, the last 4 years, you've increased the repairs and maintenance to 6,000. Whereas you had it at 2 everywhere else, and then the big jump to 32, which you said was the roof, and then you're back to 2, and then the last 4 years it goes up to 6. So I guess given inflation and costs, I was wondering why the maintenance line wasn't increasing every year. Or the labor line, they're all the same number rather than an inflation increase or.
This hasn't been done with an inflation. It's done in current year dollars across the board.
Yeah. Okay, and then but the jump to 6, was it just because you're figuring you're more maintenance because it's longer in the process?
I'd like to say yes, that was a consideration, but I think that probably it was more like a typo.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other final questions for Carla? It's not proposing that this committee provide its recommendation. That's not included within the agenda. So I want to thank Carla for your presentation and an update on the project. We'll move on.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're now moving on to 6.1, council and committee updates. Mayor Leonard and/or Councilor Morris, since are in attendance, is anything that you would like to address?
No, I think these just for the sake of time, these exits cover it well. There's the one regarding the multi-use path, and the second regarding some encroachment policy that's coming back to council again this week. If there's any questions about that, I'm happy to take them. Otherwise, we'll just leave them here for the committee's information.
Thank you. Everybody's had a chance to see them. Seeing no questions, we'll move on. New business. I don't think we have anything identified for new business at this time. And so we'll move on from that. Information items. Don't know that we have anything further as it relates to that position as well. So we're good on that. Question period. Do we have any questions or anybody that's been observing? Sophie? No? Okay. I guess seeing nothing there. We'll move. We don't have a next meeting date, so I'm not sure what's being scheduled or what will be scheduled for that. We're obviously the only dates I think that we have up against our position is for the audit process, and we're going to deal with that. But I don't think we need to establish any other dates at the present time. Unless, Kristen, you have something that you want to specifically schedule. I mean, the audit stuff isn't until spring. I mean, until quite a ways down.
Yep.
We'll
I will, unless the committee wants to see a revised draft budget, anything significantly changes. I guess we could just kind of poll and see if we feel that there's another meeting of the committee required.
Any other requests from the committee in that regard? I mean, most of the members today are going to, in fact, be members of council who will see some of that as well. So, as it turns out. So, seeing nothing from there, I just want to make one mention. As you're all may not be aware, Joyce Ganong has indicated that she'll be stepping aside from the committee at this point. I just wanted to recognize and thank her for her significant contributions over a number of years, and the value of her considered input, which was provided and really supported the committee through some interesting times overall. And we would obviously miss her, but also wish her the very best and thank her for what she's done to support this committee in over several years. So that's I guess my final comment. And she's been an excellent member of the committee and a valued one. So moving on, I guess the final point is adjournment, and I think I can move to adjournment, and unless there's any other questions or comments, any concerns before I go to adjournment? Liam?
I just wanted to echo your words about Joyce and her amazing contributions to this committee and community in general. And so she's been a very keen, active member of this committee for many years, and I really appreciated all of her insight and support. So
Thank you. Okay, and with that, I believe we can now move to adjournment. I want to thank everybody for their participation and the extra time we took to get there, but I think I appreciate the discussion and the questions and the input that was provided. So hopefully that will, I hope, assist council when they address the matter. Anyway, thank you very much. Now,
Thank you.
I guess that's the end of the meeting. Thank you kindly. So we can turn off everything and